Hello, folks. How are you out there? Thanks for joining me. And as we break down and analyze the collapsing of this horrific empire, but there is a positive. All of the coolest people in the world are here right now. You're all because if you're watching this, then you fucking rock, and it's good to have you here. And so that is that you're hanging out with the coolest people in the world. How great does that feel? It feels great, doesn't it? I don't know if you're the coolest people, but you're pretty rad. You're rocking. Thanks for being here. I am going to analyze the massive global secretive coup that has taken place, and in a way that I haven't before. And it really is shocking. It's trust me, you're going to agree with me. You're going to agree with me, and you're also going to learn some things. But I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into the revelations that we're funding more things in Ukraine other than just war. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into what Cornell West has been up to. A lot coming up. So please take a moment to hit thumbs up and share and subscribe and follow and all the other words. And do me a favor. So on Rumble right now, we're at I believe it's 59,000 followers. We're so close to 60,000. And it would be awesome if you could do rumble.com/LeakFam, click that follow, which is free. And then also click the bell icon next to it. And even if you're already following, click the bell. Okay, you get it. You know. You're too smart to not know. But so where am I going to get this information about the giant global coup that has taken place over the past 70 years? I'm getting it. So this is reposted at Popular Resistance, but this is Chris Hedges' show. My buddy Chris Hedges. He was speaking to, he interviewed the two authors of the book Silent Coup: How Corporations Overthrew Democracy. But trust me when I say as we get into this, it's not just me going, corporations are very large now and they have some power. It's much more insidious than that, much more nefarious, much more other things that end in is. We got nefarious and insidious and other ises coming at you. So, this is Chris Hedges' interview, but I did you the dirty work. I broke it down for you into some bullet points here about what these revelations are. And it actually is quite secretive what has been done to create this massive global coup that we're now living under in a bunch of ways. I have talked before about the coup that has happened in the United States, although I've focused more largely on the United States, and the U.S. has been a big part of it, but it's not just the U.S. Okay, now I have an alarm going off. Okay, it stopped. That was the CIA alerting them, the alert coming in that. So I'm not just going to say that corporations run the world, because you already know that, and that would be quite a boring episode. But no, I'm going to get into much more of it than that. And so this is a book by Matt Kennard and Claire Provost. Like I said, it's titled Silent Coup: How Corporations Overthrew Democracy. And Chris had just spoke to them. In the aftermath, so it starts out in the aftermath of European empires after World War II. World War II was really a dividing line of many of these empires, many of these colonial states. And after World War II, it did not lead, I know that you can find this shocking, did not lead to an era of democracy, of just everybody just frolicking, just having a good time with a lot of democracy and one person, one vote, and everybody just living happy. And I know that there's a lot of Americans who go, if we could just get back to the 1950s. Yeah, the 1950s were very nice for a very select group of white Americans. It's not like the world was just great. Also in the 50s and 60s, we were obliterating Korea and Vietnam and so many other countries. So to act like, man, it was all just leave it to Beaver, just good times. Yeah, for a very tiny group of individuals. who were still stuck in wage slavery and many of them in marriage slavery and other things. So even they didn't have it as good as they thought, as good as you think they did. But it, global inequality. So after World War II, you see the rise of more powerful corporations. Yes, there were corporations before that, but they have grown increasingly powerful, and increasingly disparate areas of the world have been corporatized. It's not just steel and oil now. But global inequality, as you all know, remains crazy. Crazy. 3 dudes have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of, I believe it's the world. It's like 3 or 6 dudes. I can't remember the exact one, but it doesn't really matter. It's 50% of the world. Of the world. Most of the world makes less than $2 a day. A day. Which is less than what your average cow in Britain makes. I'm not kidding. They subsidize their cows, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, but the numbers I saw were for the UK. They subsidize their cows to the tune of $2 a day, which is more than your average person makes around the world. Like, that's how insane this system is. Anyway, so these 2 authors expose the alliance between nonprofit organizations and corporations prioritizing profit over justice. Corporations have created a global legal system that allows them, and this is when we'll get into the stuff that I haven't talked about really at all. And I have done a segment before on how BlackRock owns the world. Now, they are probably the biggest player in the pieces, the logistics and the pieces that I'm going to go into here, but they're not the only ones. BlackRock and Vanguard, but it's far larger than that. It's far larger than those two. So even if you banned BlackRock and Vanguard from the surface of the earth, it wouldn't change this system. So corporations have created a global legal system that allows them to sue states for enacting policies that affect their quote unquote investor rights. And this gets to corporate personhood as well. Basically, corporations are treated as if they are at minimum nations, but really people that deserve rights. And these corporations have investor rights. It doesn't matter which country you're in. And this undermines the entire sovereignty of any of these nations, including the U.S., but the U.S. is at the top of this system. So, since corporate rule is the norm in the U.S. isn't going to argue against this system. This benefits them mainly. The main body for such cases of these investor rights is the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, associated with the World Bank. Now, I'll show you their website. Here they are here, and it looks very cheery. There's a lot of good rainbow colors on it. For those of you listening to the podcast, you got your primary colors across this website. It looks very happy. I'm surprised there's not a unicorn in the corner. But it's a very happy website. Rules and regulations, ICSID, International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. And it also sounds very banal, right? The banality of evil. It sounds really boring. And the combination of rainbow colors and boring is probably enough to get everybody who begins to look into this to turn it off, to close the website. I ain't reading no fucking rules and regulations in a rainbow book. No, thank you. You make it boring enough, and you make it thousands upon thousands of pages of legalese, and even the people who have the ability to understand the legalese are not going to read that shit. I bet you that 99% of lawyers trained in reading agreements and the legalese of corporate agreements don't read the iPhone user agreement, even the ones that can understand it. I guarantee you 99.9% are not scrolling through 90 pages of iPhone user agreement or any of these user agreements that you just click. Yeah, click. Of course I agree. Give me my porn. Jesus. Gotta read a document just to get some porn. But so this site just looks aggressively boring and innocent, which is their goal. So the ICSID was created in response, which is connected to the World Bank, was created in response to decolonization and the end of formal empires. It allows multinational corporations to enforce their rights above nation states. So this really it really made corporations and you know, I've called it inverted totalitarianism. That term was not by me, it's by Sheldon Wolin, but I've called it that in the US. I haven't really thought about it in terms of globally that we may be in inverted totalitarianism ruled by the anonymous corporate state. I mean, I guess I've thought about it, but I don't really talk about it much. But this is their argument in this book, is that we are already there. We are already in an inverted totalitarian system across the world, as opposed to just across the United States. And they raise a very interesting argument that a lot of the pressure that is put forward in order to allow this ownership of the world is through this investor state settlement court connected to the World Bank. But as it mentions, the system was created in response to decolonization. Now, there was some decolonization after World War II, right? Britain lost a lot of their colonies, or some of them are just colonies in name only. Yeah, they still got the fucking Queen on their currency. But other than that, the Queen or the King of England is not, it doesn't have a lot to say on Canada's politics. He can't really, I mean, it'd be interesting if he were to make a real issue of it. The king flies into Canada or Australia, and he's like, I am making gay marriage illegal immediately, and also abortions are mandatory, and for all, and see if how much power he had. I think probably very little. But so anyway, there was decolonization, and in many of these places, now some of them are still getting out from under the thumb of these entities. You look at like Niger right now has undergone a coup that has thrown out the French powers. Now, Niger has not technically been under the French thumb, right? They're their own country, but France has controlled their currency. France has been stealing their resources for decades and decades. So it's still colonization, even if it doesn't look that way. A lot of places around the world where the U.S. is doing that as well. But this prevalence of this International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes was built up following World War II as decolonization was going on, in order to give the corporate entities that are the most powerful entities in the world a way to control countries without it appearing that there was any sort of military control, any sort of even economic attack, really. So the system allows multinational corporations to enforce their rights above nation states. The book's opening example is the case of El Salvador, where a mining company sued the government for $300 million over a revoked mining permit. So think about what that does. That means that if you by chance end up with a government in your country who says, we are nationalizing the resources, we are going to give the money and the resources back to the people rather than to a select few, tiny number of rich motherfuckers. Instead, we're going to give it to the people, to all of the humans that are out there and need help in our country. We're going to do that instead of give it to this tiny little bitty tiny group of mainly white men. Occasionally they'll throw in a white woman just to confuse everybody, but mainly white men who sit there and just eat it all up. And if you do that, if that happens in your country, then there's a way to stop it from happening, even outside of coups or economic coups. There is this investment court where they can take you to court for millions or billions of dollars. In a minute, I'll get to Honduras, what they're doing to Honduras for suing them for $11 billion. And of course, this amount of money, which I'll also mention again in a moment, is designed to stop countries from behaving that way even before they do it, if they just know that the threat is there. But so it operates as the authors say, this operates as a shadow legal system because it's not really public. It's barely ever talked about. Even many within the World Bank don't know of it or don't know how it exactly functions. So not even every person within the World Bank knows all the details about it. It's all very shadowy. Even if you know that that a country's being sued or that actions are being taken against them, you and I can't easily, but sometimes can't at all, find the details of what's actually going on or who's making those decisions. And as the authors say, this system takes away the risk. This is probably one of the biggest key points of this. Takes away the risk of democracy for the capitalists, for capitalism, for the global corporate class that are the top of the capitalist system. Democracy comes with a big risk. And the truth is, most of them don't care about the risk of social issues. The democracy came, like real democracy. I don't mean our pretend democracy we have, but like real democracy comes to a country and then the people vote to legalize gay marriage, or the people vote to suddenly make gay marriage illegal again. Whatever it is, good, bad, ugly, all that shit. The corporate class, the top of this ruling system doesn't really care. Okay, culture war. We hate trans people. We love trans people. It's all about trans people. The corporate class that runs these systems globally and in the United States, they love when you're doing all that shit. They love that you're taking piles of Bud Light out back and shooting them with your pistol to prove you hate trans people. That is perfect for them. Any type of fracturing of the working class, ripping everyone apart at the seams, all great. So they don't really, when I say the risk of democracy, I'm not talking about the social issues. The risk of democracy for the corporate class, the ruling class, is that a leader or a government will get in power that will take away their profits in one form or another. And there's a bunch of ways this could happen. Yes, I mentioned nationalizing the resources, but if a true hardcore, intelligent socialist or some sort of other anti-capitalist were to get into power in the United States and say, we are no longer using the petrodollar because it is sending us off an ecological, environmental cliff. We're all going to die. So we're not using the petrodollar anymore. Can you imagine the uproar from the from the corporate class? That is the true risk of democracy for these motherfuckers, is that, and we see it it hasn't happened in the US, but it's happened in other countries where you get a leftist into power and then they do everything they can to get rid of them, to coup them, to stop them. And sometimes it's an all-out military coup like Bolivia. They were able to undo their coup, luckily, a year later. Sometimes it's a lawfare coup like with Pedro Castillo and Peru, or Argentina with the vice president there. Lula in Brazil, luckily they've now undone that coup. But sometimes it's a lawfare coup. But here is the global system. What I'm detailing is the global system that allows them to do it. Yes, it's a bit of lawfare, but it's a legal shadow system that makes it near impossible for a lot of countries to get outside of the corporate rule. And that takes the risk out of democracy for the corporate class. The book highlights that it's not just the cases that reach court, but the policy chill effect, where governments fear being sued and thus refrain from implementing policies that might impact corporate profits. So I mentioned that earlier, but the chilling effect is part of what's so important about this. And we see this in other areas too, like the chilling effect that they hope comes from going after the anti-Cop City protesters in Atlanta. The chilling effect they hope especially comes from prosecuting Stephen Donziger, the lawyer who won the case against Chevron. Chevron, if they were to pay it, would owe billions and billions of dollars to Ecuador for the destruction they did there. But what have they done? They've gone after the lawyer, Donziger, who won the case. Now, why are they doing that? Do they really care about him? It's over. The case is over. So getting him isn't going to change the case, really. It might in some areas, I guess. But no, the real reason they want to go after him is to create one is vengeance, but another is to create a chilling effect. So other environmental lawyers won't risk going after corporations. And it's the same with this international shadow legal system. Countries will fear acting out against these corporate rulers. The international legal system is enshrined in free trade agreements, bilateral investment treaties, and other financial agreements, often without countries fully understanding the implications. And I and a few others, there really weren't many of us, were fighting against Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, and that was one of the key aspects of the TPP. For those who, if this is already faded from your memory, this is going to be the largest trade deal ever enacted, covering 40% of the fucking world economies. TPP, it started under Obama. It was written by lawyers. No one could see it. Congress people couldn't even see it until eventually they could make an appointment and go and see the, thousands of page document, thousands of pages, but they couldn't bring any recording equipment, no pens, no nothing. They had to try and memorize the thousands of pages in their 1 hour where they got to look at it. That's just Congress people. Nobody else is allowed to see it. And one of the key things in that was that if corporations don't like something a country does, they can bring that issue to an international tribunal of 3 judges who would make the final decision of whether you're allowed to stop a mining company, an oil company, whatever else from completely fucking up your country, stealing resources, whatever, polluting, massive pollution. 3 corporate judges internationally would decide whether you get to rape the world or not. And which side do you think they'd normally be on? Do you think those judges would get to the top of the international tribunal that makes corporate law decisions by being a really goody environmental lawyer who always sides with the people who hug the trees? Or do you think they got to that position by proving throughout their careers that they were going to defend corporate destruction of this world? I'm going to go with B. Option B. I made that one kind of easy, I guess. These international corporate systems are undermining democracy worldwide, even in developed nations. The ICSID's operations are so secretive that even many, I said this, but bears repeating, even many in the World Bank are unaware of its existence. The arbitration process is non-transparent. The selection of arbitrators, the compensation structures, and case details are kept confidential. All incredibly secretive, because what does democracy rely on? It relies on the people knowing and understanding what's going on. So if you can hide it from them or make it convoluted enough that they don't get it, you've done. You won. That's it. As long as your average person, your average American, your average person in any country opens up the newspaper and goes, wait, you won. It's over. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need fucking, that's the thing. Yes, sometimes you can do it with years of propaganda, the years of propaganda that went into somehow justifying the invasion of Iraq. Sometimes you can do it with that. The years of propaganda that went into trying to make us think Russiagate was a real thing. Years. Sometimes you can do it with that. Sometimes you just make some legalese, you make it secretive and confusing, and everybody goes, oh, what happens? And that's it. You did it. Don't need a single report from Rachel Maddow going, the Russians are coming. They're over the hills. They're right there. And they're going to get us. You don't need a single report like that. Now, the TPP, we were able to stop the TPP. I say we, putting myself in with a group of, again, not many activists that were standing up against it. But the true credit, I believe, goes to Margaret Flowers and Kevin Zeese, two activists who really made it their mission. And unfortunately, Kevin Zeese is no longer with us. But the reason we were able to defeat it was because it became an issue amongst a kind of fringe group that cared about such a thing. And even though we wanted everyone to care about it, and then it brought it to Trump's attention so that it became something that Trump actually noticed and knew what it was. And now the reason he immediately signed it away, got rid of it, he didn't sign it, he crushed it on day one of his in office. The reason he did that was not because he read it and thought it was bad for it was anti-China, so he would have loved it if he actually read it. No, the reason he crushed it immediately was because people that supported him were telling him to crush it because it was something Obama had written and Hillary supported it, and that's the reason. So he crushed it for all the wrong reasons. His own ego. Oh, Obama wrote it. Oh, I don't like it then. But it fucking worked. The activists won. Anyway, that was a side note. But so incredibly secretive. This secrecy benefits both corporations and states as they can avoid public scrutiny and set their own rules. The ICDS system enables jurisdiction shopping, where companies set up shell companies in countries with favorable treaties to sue other nations. Now, this is done within the United States. This is part of our inverted totalitarian system where companies will officially be located. It's just a mailbox. They're not even there, but they'll officially be located in an area of the country where they are given huge legal benefits. Let's say if they're patent trolls and they run around trying to steal patents and sue people, then they're located in like this one small town in Texas where the judge just falls over backwards to help them do their criminal, patent trolling. And that's the same type of thing, but this is done internationally. Find the country that is going to benefit you most in these lawsuits, and you pretend to be located there. Kind of like Google's headquarters. I don't know where it is now. For a while, it was in Ireland. Then they moved it, I think, or I may be confusing Apple and Google, but one of them was in Ireland. One of them was in the Isle of Wight, off of the UK, off of Britain, because those were the places that gave them the biggest tax breaks. Like they put like zero taxes. So you think of this all-American company like Google or Apple, and they're headquartered in Ireland with fucking 3 employees that sit there and just guard the mailbox. Just guard the Apple mailbox. Third-party financing allows financial firms to invest in claims against governments, lending money to corporations for case expenses in exchange for a cut of the award if they win. So basically anybody can fund these things, these cases. And if you're talking globally, imagine all the people that have billions and billions of dollars. You could go to some monarch somewhere and be like, will you fund this case to destroy this country and get $300 million or $5 billion if we win because they wouldn't let us do our mining? And the multi billionaires like, sure. What's it cost? 10 million? Oh yeah, no, it's nothing. Pocket change. Let's see where I wanted to show you what's going on in Honduras, if I can find it. Here we go. So right now they're going after on Honduras with one of these things. Some ISDS cases involve significant sums, potentially impacting entire nations, such as the $11 billion suit against Honduras. And Honduras is threatening, this is from July, threatening withdrawal from the investment dispute tribunal over $11 billion claim by U.S. firm Prospera. How much do you know about Prospera? When you go about your average life in the United States, do you go, oh, fucking Prospera? No, you've probably never heard of it. I've never heard of it. But it's some fucking company that just suing Honduras for $11 billion because they wouldn't let them build their like little personal city. Over $11 billion claim by Prospera, a U.S. company arguing that it's breached law and procedure. In April 2022, the Honduran government repealed a 2013 law that allowed the U.S. company to establish a charter city in a special economic zone. So basically, Honduras had shitty leaders, and they signed a deal with this company to give them their own city where they could do whatever the fuck they want and make their own laws and make their own city. It was basically, here, have your own nation that's kind of like inside Honduras. And then you get better leadership in Honduras, and they go, we're repealing that bullshit, because why should you get your own city within our country? Are you out of your minds? And so they repeal it, and now that company is suing Honduras for $11 billion, which is a serious amount of money for a country like Honduras. Prospera's $11 million claim for damages amounts to about 2/3 of Honduras's annual budget. 2/3 of their budget. Bloomberg described this city that Prospero was going to create as, quote, a mini startup nation with its own set of laws. So basically, Honduras had ceded ownership of part of their country to this fucking company. And later, someone got into office and said, "Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not give away our country to corporations." And now the corporation is suing them for such a large amount of money that not only, here's the thing, even if they win, let's say they win this case and they don't owe that money, the amount of effort and money that they're going to have to put into fighting this is designed to cause other countries to not do this, to not go up against a large corporate entity in any way. Even if you get a leftist into power, even if you get someone into power who says, I'm going to bring the money from the oil, from the coal, from the lithium, all money comes from horrible places. There's really nothing good. I'm going to bring all the skipping money. You know how we get paid every time someone skips? I'm going to bring all the skipping money back to the people and give it back to them. Well, this is designed to make sure that no one ever does that. It's designed to stop the risk of democracy. And it's succeeding in many ways. The ISDS has grown in strength over these past decades, overshadowing other global entities and issues. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, including major organizations like Oxfam, have entered partnerships with corporations, compromising their missions and ethics. The privatization of military and security forces raises concerns about the loss of state monopoly on the legitimate use of force. So now you've got corporations that will begin having armies. Granted, that has happened in the past. It's not like this is the first time that's ever happened, but they have mercenaries, they have people getting paid to fight, and then you have corporate entities that are powerful than most countries. I mean, a lot of countries in this world don't even have big armies. They're not like the United States that is invading and crushing and bombing constantly. They just kind of try and live their own little thing in their place, and they just stay there. I don't know. They're out of their minds. I mean, I can't imagine just like living in your area and not wanting to steal all of the rest of the world. I don't. What are they thinking? Like, why would you not? You know? But anyway, the lack of regulation in this area allows corporations to act with impunity, possibly leading to future conflicts or atrocities. So there you have most of it. I broke it down as simply as I could, but this is a massive global coup that puts corporations in charge of decisions over nation states, even if you elect someone in there who's better. And granted, most countries, a lot of countries don't have legitimate democracies, don't, even ones that claim to, like the United States. It's fucking not a democracy. It's owned by, even if you wanted to believe our actual voting system, like when I march in there and I push the computer screen and even if you wanted to believe all that was perfect, not a question. I pushed the screen and I got my vote. Even if you wanted to believe all that was great, it's still owned by money. It's still owned by money. It's still, it's whoever the rich get a billion times the media of someone who's not rich. The rich fund their campaigns, and you can't beat someone with a $10 million in the bank, not to mention $1 billion in the bank. So it's like, it's completely owned by money. And that's if we had a legit democracy. Anyway, but in other systems where they do, and that someone leftist, someone who actually wants to help the people gets into office, this investor states, I forgot what the initial standard, International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, basically can stop them from doing any of that. And, hopefully this is the type of thing, this is the type of story that is incredibly important that you aren't getting from a lot of, you're definitely not getting from the mainstream media, but you aren't getting even from a lot of independent outlets. They ignore this type of thing. They ignore inverted totalitarianism and the global coup that has been perpetrated. And of course, BlackRock, like I said, I did a segment a year ago about BlackRock owning the world. Well, BlackRock's probably the biggest player, or one of the top two. Vanguard might be second or first, I don't know, but of this system of owning the world. So, they work together. BlackRock is definitely a major part of it. All right, I got a lot of the stories I got to get to. I got to get this clip from 60 Minutes Australia telling you that that Americans are now paying the salaries of like Ukrainians and paying for dogs, paying for the training of dogs in Ukraine and stuff. And hilariously, this 60 Minutes clip is trying to endorse the war. It's propaganda for the war, and if you watch it, it just, I think it makes everyone fucking furious at funding this proxy war. It has the reverse effect that they're intending. I got to get to that and a bunch of other stuff in a few minutes. This live stream will just be on my locals page, leecamp.net and rumble.com/LeeCamp. So join me over there, rumble.com/LeeCamp. It's free to watch. Join me over there. Make sure you click subscribe or follow and click the bell icon next to it. For those of you who already are following at rumble.com/LeeCamp, please make sure you've clicked the bell icon, or else you will not get alerted to my videos. So it makes a huge difference. We're so close to, I think, 60,000 followers. So I hope you'll do that. All right, let's do it. Let's get in. Oh, and then I got an update. I got something from Cornell West. I got, Molotov cocktail. I got something about Molotov cocktails coming up, and I feel like that's something you want to see. Okay. So this is 60 Minutes Australia, which for some odd reason, 60 Minutes Australia they're trying to do the propaganda, but they just keep shitting the bed. I played a clip from them like last week where they had the IDF soldiers who were anti-Netanyahu. So that's why I had them on, because they're criticizing Netanyahu. But within it, they're saying that their goal is to fire missiles into buildings with children. 60 Minutes Australia just is not so good at their propaganda. They're trying really hard. I feel for them. They really. They want to. They're trying. But okay, so this is them talking about what the U.S. is funding right now with all, some say we're up to $160 billion that's been shipped over to Ukraine. A lot of that is weapons and arms, cluster bombs, which are banned in 100 countries, etc. But this segment, this is a short clip of it, is trying to say, don't worry if you're upset that we're only sending weapons over there. We're also, and Australia's because we basically own Australia. They are perfectly happy being a vassal state to the U.S. So they're like, we are also funding a lot of other things in Ukraine. And see if this makes you happy to have sent billions of taxpayer dollars over there.
American taxpayers are financing more than just weapons. We discovered the US government's buying seeds and fertilizer for Ukrainian farmers and covering the salaries of Ukraine's first responders. all 57,000 of them. That includes the team that trains this rescue dog named Joy.
I gotta stop there for a second. Don't worry, U.S. taxpayer, as you're like facing eviction, as you're drinking lead-tainted water. 2,000 U.S. cities have unsafe levels of lead in the water, as you're breathing contaminated air, as your kids are trying to learn in schools that are collapsing because they've been intentionally defunded. As all of that's going on in your life, don't worry. You're helping pay for this dog. You paid for this dog in Ukraine. You paid for the salaries of 57,000 employees in Ukraine. It's like the idea that people would be celebrating, yay! Now, for those who are propagandized enough and believe that this war, this proxy war in Ukraine, is just wonderful and it's awesome and all that stuff, if they're propagandized enough, they might celebrate this if their lives are going fine. But most Americans' lives are not going fine. Most Americans, 64% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They don't know where their next month's food is going to come from. And here we are celebrating. Don't worry, Americans. You're paying for this dog. You're paying for just random firefighters in Ukraine. Because we love a good proxy war. And for those who think this is a good idea, and you're like, well, the firefighters are helping the peoples in the Ukraine, and I like helping people, so I will send my money to that. If you like humans, for one thing, you should want this war to be over right now. You should not want it to keep going forever. But beyond that, there are so many struggling people around this world who need help. Why are we only sending money to Ukraine? Even if you want to believe the propaganda about what this war is in Ukraine, why are we only helping Ukrainians while you have just millions around the world suffering in horrific ways, many of them in countries that we've destroyed economically, intentionally. So there's that. You have 94% of Syrians live under the poverty line. 94% of Syrians aren't sure where they're going to get the gas to cook their next meal. Do you want to help them? No. I only want to fund this dog. If I can just fund this dog, then I think we've really done our part. We've played our role.
To comb through the wreckage of Russian strikes looking for survivors. And the US also funds the divers, who we saw clearing unexploded ammunition from the country's rivers.
Unexploded ammunition from the country's rivers. You know what types of unexploded ammunition is there? Well, one of the big ones is fucking cluster bombs, which should not be used at all, are banned by 100 countries, and the U.S. is sending them to fucking Nazis to do with as they see fit. And if Russia's using cluster bombs, there's debate back and forth as to whether they are, but either way, I'm opposed to that too. But here's the thing, this war wouldn't be going on at all if it weren't for a lot of U.S. actions. And we just had recently, thank you, head of NATO. We just had recently the head of NATO admitted that this war is because of NATO expansion. All this time, year and a half, they've been telling us, oh no, Putin's just Hitler and he just likes stealing other countries and that's what it is. And now here you have the head of NATO saying that, oh no, Putin went into Ukraine because of NATO expansion, because that was a red line for Russian security. So thank you for admitting that, NATO. Didn't think you would, but we appreciate it.
To make them safe again for swimming and fishing. Russia's invasion shrank Ukraine's economy by about a third. We were surprised to find that to keep it afloat.
Yeah, just Russia's invasion shrank the economy by a third. Nothing to do with the United States, nothing to do with the 2014 Maidan coup, nothing to do with the U.S.-backed politicians we put in there. Nothing to do with the fact that Zelensky got into office by saying he was going to create peace and avoid war, and then he went headlong into war. Nothing to do with the fact that when the peace plan was actually in front of them in April, right after the invasion began, the U.S. and Britain went running to Ukraine to make sure peace wouldn't happen, to make sure no peace deals would be signed. None of that influenced Ukraine economy, just Russia.
Quote, the US government is subsidizing small businesses.
Yeah. Subsidizing small businesses. And they showed, for those of you listening to the podcast, which if anyone prefers podcasts or you want to grab this while on your drive sometime, it's called The Lee Camp Show on Spotify. It's also called Moment of Clarity on other platforms. But for those of you listening to the podcast, they just showed an image of an old lady trying on like a sweater or a jacket or something. So if you are an American struggling in the United States, 64% don't know where their next paycheck will come from or don't know, are living paycheck to paycheck. Many of them starving. Many of them don't have health care. Just if they get sick or something, they stay home. They don't go see a doctor because they know that could be just crushing to them. Many of them just die. That's one of the reasons that COVID was more devastating for the United States than other countries is many people who get sick, they just stay home and some of them die because they don't want to fucking go to a doctor. They know the emergency room costs thousands of dollars. You gotta be out of your mind. So while all this is going on, we're funding small businesses in Ukraine. The United States is sending money to prop up a store that sells sweaters to old ladies. That's right, Americans. For those of you wondering how you're going to get clean water for your kid to drink, just know that you helped that old lady buy a sweater. You helped an old lady in Ukraine get a sweater that she didn't need a sweater. She wasn't like desperately cold or something. She had plenty of sweaters. She just wanted a new one. She wanted a new, slightly nicer sweater, and you helped that happen. So that's really great of you. Okay, everybody. So the rest of this is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. If you're on one of the other services, please head over to rumble.com/Lee Camp, completely free to join me there. I'll go ahead and put the link in the, I'll go ahead and put the link here so that you can just click that in the comment thread. Sorry for the delay. Join me at Rumble or Locals. If you're at Locals, this keeps going there too. Okay. Where were we? Let's play a little more of this clip. Oh, are we at the end of it? I don't know. Yeah, we might have been close to the end of it, but
Invasion shrank Ukraine's economy by about a third. We were surprised to find that to keep it afloat, the US government is subsidizing small businesses. American taxpayers are financing more than just weapons.
So there you have it. 60 Minutes in Australia trying to do their